think we can probably get things started. So I want to thank everybody for joining us again here today. And I'm going to encourage you to turn your cameras on so we can see you. We've been doing these online sessions now for several years. And if you've ever presented to an online audience, it's always easier to present to people and faces than to black screens with letters on them. So if you can, please turn your cameras on and support Lacey as she gives us this presentation today. So today we have Lacey Wallace with us, who's a research analyst with NACS. And if you don't know who NACS is the National Association of College Stores. And we call them our big sister association in the U.S., supporting and representing the institution-owned and operated and the independent schools in the U.S. So Lacey's here to present on trends, data, and what students say. And from my understanding, the data and trends that Lacey's going to be sharing with us today comes from the NACS monthly student panel surveys. So this information was freshly compiled within the last week or so, I think, Lacey. So this is all fairly new information, I think, that you're going to hear about today. So Lacey, again, thank you for joining us today, and I'll turn it over to you and you can get things started.
Absolutely. So I'm just getting my screen sharing up and going here. All right, let's see. Greg, can you see this?
We can, yeah.
Okay, awesome. So welcome, everybody. So first thing, I want to say thank you. I realize December is a really busy time of year, and I know you have a million other things going on. So I really appreciate all of you taking an hour of your day to hang out with me and talk about research, which for some people is not very exciting, but for me, it's what I look forward to every day. So hopefully I'll get you excited about it. Even if you're still waking up a little bit this morning. So as Greg mentioned, my goal here today is to really walk you through the latest that we've been finding at NACS from the research studies we've been conducting over the past few months. So everything I'll share with you is not very old. It dates anywhere from September to just a few weeks ago in November. And you folks actually are a little bit lucky. Most of what I shared today, folks at NACS won't see until late February if they come to CAMX in Savannah, Georgia. So you get to actually see it a couple months ahead of time. So a little bit of a sneak peek. So I'm just going to dive in, and I'm hoping we'll have a little bit of time at the end for questions. That way we can chat over things that were a little fuzzy for you or things where I maybe didn't get into enough detail, something like that. So let me dive in. So the first thing I definitely want to clarify is where all this information comes from. Anytime I share numbers, I want to be really transparent about what those numbers are and where we got them. So everything I'll share today comes from our student panel surveys. If you're familiar with NACS, you might have heard about either Student Watch or Faculty Watch. Those are big nationwide surveys we do every fall for faculty and every spring with students, mostly in the US, but some in Canada. Student panel data is different from that. So if you've heard about those other two, it's a little different. In order to be part of the student panel, students who take our Student Watch survey in the spring, there's a checkbox at the end, and students can say, yes, I want to continue to take other surveys with you on an ongoing basis. If they check that box, they join our student panel. That panel is now over 20,000 students strong, mostly in the United States. We do have some Canadian students in there, but not as many as I'd like. We're hoping that'll improve in the next year or two. I'll get to that more in a little bit. But over 20,000 students at this point will take these surveys. And what we do is we send out like 5 to 10 minute surveys about 3 times every fall and about 3 times every spring. And instead of being focused on course materials, which is Student Watch and Faculty Watch, our panel surveys are a little different. They're more targeted topics or timely topics. So the fall ones, for example, I have listed here. In September, it was all about returning to school. What are you buying for back to school? How are you feeling about your safety on campus? In October, it was apparel. What are you wearing, buying, not liking, that kind of thing. And then just this past month, a few weeks ago, we were asking about tech spending. And since a lot of students are starting to enter exam season, we asked about stress and stress products they might be interested in purchasing. So that's another category we ask about as well. So everything I share with you today comes from one of those 3 fall surveys. So it's literally the most recent data I can possibly get for you. Now, if we were in the spring, I'd have a little bit more on like convenience store purchases, things like that. But for now, this is what I have, and we can definitely chat about kind of the latest and what's different from last year compared to this year. Now, I did mention I don't have great Canadian representation, which is a bummer. That is true. And we are hoping to improve on that. But when I do US and Canada comparisons, and I do that for all of these, I haven't really been noticing much of a difference. Every now and then something interesting will pop up where Canadian students are different in some way, but it's pretty rare. I'll point out a couple places where that happens today, but for the most part, I'm noticing trends are really similar. So I wouldn't worry about that too much as we go through the today. And I'll put in like bright yellow highlight whenever there is a difference that was particularly interesting or meaningful. But for the most part, we don't see a lot of difference there between the 2 groups of students. Okay. So this is where all of our data is coming from today. And again, I like to be super transparent. We have about 1,500 to 2,500 students reply to each of these surveys. And so that's kind of the data points that we're working with here today. Now, I won't cover all of these topics in order. I'll definitely get to all of them, but I think I want to start with kind of the biggest, broadest, and then work our way to kind of the miscellaneous purchasing trends towards the end. That way we hit everything, especially the really important stuff first. So let's start with apparel. The reason I start with apparel is it's our most popular student panel survey. Students get really excited to tell us about what they like and what they don't like. We get the highest response rate with this particular panel topic across the entire academic year. It's the one that students, if they're going to fill something out for us, it's this one. And they care about it so much that sometimes I'll even get separate emails from students who say, hey, I just took your survey and I didn't see this question, but I wanted you to know. And then they'll tell me something about sizing or brands or something like that. They are that into this topic. So I'll definitely start with this one first. So I titled this Fashion 2024 because I know that's kind of where we're headed. Here we are in December, and so we're all thinking about what do we stock, what do we think about for the spring that's hopefully coming after our long winter ahead of us. So let's start with what students are feeling about fashion. One important thing to note is that students still aren't really that, I'm trying to think of the right word here, they're not all that excited about keeping up with the latest fashions, the latest brands. Most of our students tell us that that's not very important to them. There is a very small percentage, about 2%, that say, I want to keep up with everything, the latest shirts, pants, everything. But most students are not like that. And most of the students in that 2% are female identifying students. So it's a very small group. Most students don't care that much. Even only 10% said it was very important to keep up with the latest fashions. That is not where our students are focused. And their styles haven't really been changing much over the past 12 months. More than 70% said, I haven't really changed my style or my fashion in the past year. So a lot of what I'll share today, you'll notice sounds a lot like last year, and it is. There are some things that are definitely starting to shift, but for the most part, it's been pretty stable in the past year or two. And a lot of it is because students don't seem very focused on following the latest trends and the latest fads. It's a little more slow moving for them than you might expect. Now, that doesn't mean that students aren't buying things. Just because they're not into the latest fashions necessarily doesn't mean they're not going out and buying things from your store or somewhere else. About a quarter of students say that they plan to buy more clothes in the next year than they did over the past year. So an increase in purchasing. That's really similar to what we noticed when we asked this same question in 2022. So there definitely is a group of students who say, I'm going to go out and buy more than I did over the past year. Whether or not fashion necessarily is important to them is kind of a different issue. So they're still buying. So don't be discouraged just because it looks like they don't care as much. They do want to purchase. And they do want to purchase in ways that maybe you also might not expect. I know there's this misconception that students buy literally everything online. And in some categories, that's true, but not apparel. Apparel is kind of a glaring exception to that trend. We find that more than 2/3 of students want to buy apparel specifically in store, not necessarily online. Now, if you've got more what I call upper level students, 3rd and 4th year, if you're at a bachelor's institution, they're a little more open to buying online. But overall, most of our students want to try it on. They want to touch it. They want to feel it. They want the chance to see it in person before they purchase it. So that is definitely something to keep in mind. Now, when we're talking about the college or the campus store specifically, we ask students what influences whether you buy from the college store or not. The biggest thing that students told us mattered to them in that decision was price. The price point was huge. That's why I have it highlighted in green there. That was the number one thing they said influenced that choice. College store or not? Do I buy from here or not? Now you'll notice those percentages don't add up to 100% if you're going 76 and 54. It's not your math, I promise. Students could indicate multiple things that influence their decision to buy from the campus or college store or not. Price was the number one. Fabric quality was number two. So fabric quality could be softness or texture. Does this feel like a high quality item? Now, this can be a little confusing. It wasn't necessarily brand name. I know sometimes fabric quality and brand name can go together, but for students, they were seeing the two separately. The fabric quality mattered, not so much the brand name. And I think that ties in well to the idea that students don't feel the need to follow the latest fashions necessarily or the latest brand names, but they do want a good price point and they want a fabric that feels good on their body, that feels like it's high quality. Those are the things that matter when they're deciding whether or not to buy from you, the college store, or whether to go to someplace down the road. So that's a way you can distinguish yourself from some of the big box stores or some of the online-only retailers. So that matters to our students. We also asked our students, are there certain people or places that influence what you want to buy, what you want to wear? These are their top 4. And these are the same top 4 as last year, almost the exact same percentages too. Friends are number 1. Peer pressure matters, we know this. People want to wear what their friends are wearing. So friends were definitely one of the top sources. They were the number 1 source actually. Then we get into social media. Instagram and TikTok are big. I'm old. In my day it was Facebook, but nowadays it's Instagram and TikTok. That's another big source of inspiration. Now, it's not necessarily their friends on social media platforms. It could be an influencer or a brand that they follow. Okay? So there might be some overlap. Maybe it is friends on there, but it could also be other messaging that they're seeing. But those are number 2 and 3. And then there's either store or brand websites, which they might see advertising for if they're online. Those are their top sources. If they're trying to decide what kinds of things to wear or buy, that's what they're going to turn to. Now, this might encourage you just a little bit if you're sitting there thinking, well, crap, I can't compete with that. You might be able to a little bit. About 17% of our students say that they're inspired by in-store displays. And remember, a couple minutes ago, I said that about 2/3 of students really want to buy apparel in store. They're going to come and see what either you or another store has so that they can feel it, touch it, try it on. So there definitely is a group of students you might be able to influence even with these in-store displays, whether it's, what pairings might go together nicely, whether you're trying to show off a new product. There is a chunk of students who still find these as a source of influence. So don't be discouraged if you can't necessarily compete with these other sources. There are ways that you in your store can grab some of those buyers, especially the ones who are really motivated to buy in store. So this definitely applies to you. This particular picture, I believe, is Rockford College. I think is the one I pulled out. I wanted to have one that was very college store specific there. So that's what's influencing students. Now in terms of what they want, when they walk in and they're looking for a specific product, the number one thing they're looking for from you is comfort. Okay? Now this is very much a pandemic trend and beyond. So if we're thinking back to 2020, I know we're all trying to forget that year, but if we think back to that and then move forward to the present, that trend has been really consistent. Students want clothing that's comfortable, and it could be clothing that's loose or baggy, that's comfortable. It could also be clothing that's more like leggings, that's stretchy. But that's the number one type of clothing students are looking for. Is it something that I can lounge around in? Is it something I can wear to multiple places? Can I wear it to class? It needs to be comfortable, stretchy. If it's winter in Canada or here, it needs to be warm, right? But comfortable is most important. So that means just like last year, the types of things students are wearing most often and looking to purchase are things like t-shirts, either long sleeve or short sleeve, depending on what the weather is where you are. Baggy and loose clothing, that could be sweatshirts, it could be hoodies, it could be joggers or sweatpants. Any of those types of items, students really gravitate to. Things that are comfy, stretchy, loose. Okay? That's what they want. Same as last year, we really haven't been seeing much change in that. Now, to dig more into this, we also ask students, are there certain types of fits that you really like? And this is a type of question where students could select more than one, so percentages definitely do not add up to 100%. But you see a lot of students who say, yeah, I like things that are fitted, kind of like leggings might be. Still stretchy is something they tell us. A lot of students like the loose, baggy clothing, like those joggers or sweatshirts. We also see a lot of students who tell us that they really prefer clothing that isn't gendered, that's not marketed specifically to males or to females, like a lot of sweatshirts, hoodies, sweatpants. They're looking for clothing that really isn't necessarily geared towards one gender or another. But comfort is key here. Just like the last couple of years, that's what students want to see. Now, as you're thinking about what to stock or what kinds of things to stock, you do want to know your clientele. So, for instance, even though a lot of students say they like unisex clothing, there are gender differences in what students prefer. So, for example, if you have a lot of customers coming in who identify as female, maybe you're looking at crop clothing as something you want to carry. So crop clothing, kind of like this picture, can refer to clothes that maybe end at the bust and leave the belly exposed. Still quite popular. I'm still thinking about winter in Canada. Maybe not popular right this moment, but at least in the warmer weather or warmer months. That's really popular among female identifying students, not male. Okay. Our female identifying students also said they really liked the oversized and some of the unisex clothing more than others, more than male identifying or non-binary students. So knowing kind of the gender breakdown or types of demographics of your students can be really helpful to identify what types of fits really matter for you. Same thing with color, which I'll get to in just a sec. Color is another one where we do see some gender differences. Overall, though, this is another year where students tell us they prefer the soft colors. So the top colors students want this year, your grays, not necessarily black or white, but your gray tones. Your pastels, those like soft colors, not the primary colors, okay? And earth tones, those are ones on the far right of your screen, okay? It's kind of browns, greens, tans. Those are super popular this year. The pastels and earth tones are especially popular among your female identifying students. One kind of interesting thing that jumped out here is we noticed that some of our male identifying students gravitated towards what I would call primary colors. Your bright blue, bright red, bright yellow, but no other students gravitated towards that. It was really specific to male identifying students and not even a big chunk of those. So you may find some students are still going after those primary colors, but it's very gendered, and it's definitely a minority of students. Most students want these soft tones this year. I'm not sure if you've heard of it. Every year this company called Pantone introduces a color of the year. This year it's one of the pastels. It's like this like a pastel orangish red color, right in line with what we're finding with our students. It's those soft tones that they really seem to want. But again, know your clientele. If you know proportionally, oh, I have more female identifying students coming in, or I have more male, that can help you gear your color selection or even your fit selection to match what students really want to see in your store. But again, just like last year, we're seeing these soft tones as being really popular. Now, it's also helpful sometimes to know what students label as popular or not, regardless of color or fit or things like that. For the most part, it's kind of what we've talked about so far. A lot of the comfy clothing, oversized, loose, or if it is fitted, something stretchy like a legging. That's really, really popular right now. Denim is still popular, so jeans are definitely still in. But there is one change this year. Compared to last year, wide-legged jeans, so the ones with really wide legs that are more straight all the way down, and flare jeans, which open at the bottom, kind of like this picture here, those are growing in popularity, and that's new. We did not see that in 2022. So wide leg and flare jeans are coming in. As those come in, what we would call mom jeans, which are more wide, but a lot of times have holes, they might be torn or distressed, those are on their way out. So the ripped, tattered trend is fading. The wide leg and flare trend seems to be coming in. So we're kind of in this transition point where you may have students who want both. But we are seeing that fashion shift. We don't know yet if it'll continue another 12 months, but that's what students are telling us now is emerging trends and fading trends. Now, I promised that I'd mention places where we did notice a US trend versus a Canada trend. So I definitely want to highlight one of those here. We were playing around with, US regions, Canada, to see, are there differences in what students really gravitate to? And compared to US students, so you can ignore the whole top part if you want, but compared to US students, Canadian students gravitated towards a few items. One is waist packs. So those are basically a belt, almost like a little purse pouch that you can carry around your waist. I'm extra old. We called those fanny packs when I was younger, but they call them waist packs now. Our Canadian students gravitated towards those more than our US students. Loose and comfy clothing were especially popular for our Canadian folks. And flare jeans. In that middle picture there where they open at the bottom, those were especially popular for our Canadian students. So we're definitely seeing that trend there more than we're seeing that same trend in the United States. So that did jump out. We don't always see a US-Canada difference, but we did see it there. So definitely make mental note of that one. All right, so that's what students want. Sometimes it's also helpful to know what they don't want. And I'll do that via picture this time. Things students really don't want. This year they told us they do not want plaid. I know there was a trend in stores for a while to have a lot of plaid items. I don't know who they're selling it to, but our students said they don't want it. So apparently that is not the clientele there. They were very much anti-plaid. They also don't want mini skirts. They don't want hair scrunchies. If we're doing kind of a 90s throwback, they don't want that. Windbreaker style jackets, they were not into those either. So those are items that students specifically said, please don't try to sell us these. We don't want to see them. So that's helpful as well. Now, if you're like me and you're like, whew, she is throwing all this information at me. Here's kind of a quick recap. So basically, not much change from last year. Students still want comfy clothing, either loose or stretchy. Wide leg and flare jeans are on their way in. The ripped, tattered look starting to go on its way out. And most students want to try things on in person. So the more you can engage with that in-person customer and show them what you have, the better off you'll likely be. And in terms of colors, we're still looking at soft tones, not the bright primary colors. So as I mentioned, I'm kind of going big to small in terms of product trends. Apparel is a huge chunk, but it's definitely not the only thing students might come into your store wanting to buy. So definitely knocked out apparel, that's the huge one. Now I want to go to tech spending, and then we'll kind of hit some miscellaneous bits towards the end of today. So tech spending. So this can refer to devices like a computer or a phone. It can also refer to accessories like a case or a charger. So both of these I'll include in tech. And our tech spending survey was in November. So actually all of this just comes from about 3 to 4 weeks ago tops. So here's what students are telling us. The things they most want to buy next year, over the next 12 months, phones and phone accessories, those are right up there, followed by laptops and laptop accessories. That's what students want to buy in the next year. Now, these percentages will not add up to 100% because students could tell us that they wanted to buy more than one thing. But the top ones they want to buy, phones, phone-related accessories, laptops or laptop accessories. Very similar to last year, and in terms of device ownership and intent, it's really, really similar. So no big changes here. One thing I do want to point out though, and this ties into what we saw with apparel, a pretty big chunk of students say that they want to touch, feel, and play with the devices or accessories in store before they buy them. That is really, really important to them. Just like with apparel, sometimes there's this misconception that students want to buy everything online. Sometimes, right? But in this case, as with apparel, they really want to see, feel, touch. I realize that for many of you, it's not possible to have devices out, round the clock. That could be a security issue among other things. But even if you're just able to have a special event at certain times of the year where students can come, check things out, see, feel, and touch it, you may find that's a way to engage these customers who want that experience. So definitely something I wanted to point out here that might help give you an edge. And you kind of need one, unfortunately. I wish I had better news here. Compared to last year, more students this year said they knew that their college store sold devices, sold accessories. So awareness has improved over the past year, but students still aren't really thrilled with what's available in the college store. They're really ambivalent about it, actually. About half of our students said they weren't really happy or satisfied with it. But they also weren't necessarily upset about what was being offered either. If they were an emoji, they'd be the meh emoji. They're not feeling very excited at all. And that shows in their purchasing behavior. Only about 6% of our students said they had purchased a device or accessory from their college store in the past year. It's very, very low. And pretty small percentages, as you see here, said that they would at least think about buying a device or accessory in the college store in the next year or in the future. Those percentages have stayed pretty low. They're actually better this year than last year, so that's an improvement. We're happy to see that. But it is an area of purchasing where we're really struggling to see students go into the college store. From a research side, we're still not super sure why that is. It may be the price point is high, perhaps awareness is still an issue, but we're not seeing a lot of students really going into the college store specifically to buy these. Unfortunately, they're really going to your competitors. They're going to your online-only retailers. Amazon sells literally everything. They're going to technology-specific stores, so they might be going to the Apple store. They might be going to Best Buy. They're more likely to turn to those places rather than the college store. And that's where and why I brought up this issue of students wanting to touch and feel a product. If you're trying to get some of those customers back to get them in your door instead, that may be one way you can do that. Can't guarantee that, of course, but it's definitely an area of struggle for the college store. So kind of as a recap of all that, again, most students really, really want that touch or feel experience. Only 8% of students said they really didn't care if they touched it, saw it, felt it. Really small percent. Most really want to have some interaction with that tech product before they buy it. They're looking for phone accessories. That's the top thing they want to purchase. And again, we're struggling with getting out awareness of what the college store carries and has available. That's something that continues to be a struggle in this particular retail space. And again, this is the latest info we have. The Tech Trends survey went out, I believe it was November 7th or 8th, and didn't close until just before American Thanksgiving a couple weeks ago. So this is really almost to the minute results as far as what students are telling us. So that's apparel and tech. Those are the two biggest categories we focus on in our fall student panel survey. But we do ask about other products, and that's where I'll call it my miscellaneous categories here towards the end today. There's 3 areas I'll highlight. Back to school shopping, I'll highlight very briefly. That's something we focus a little bit more on in our spring surveys when we ask about general merchandise, but we do have a little from the fall that I can share. The second category I'll talk about briefly are like stress and stress relief products. As we're going into exam season, that's really super relevant right now. And the last category that I'll focus on today are personal safety products. And a lot of that information comes from our September back to school survey, which encompassed campus safety and how students were feeling on campus day or night. So those are 3 areas I'll group here together towards the end, and we should have just a little bit of time left over for questions. So let's start with back to school first. That's what BTS stands for up here. And this one I'll highlight only very briefly. We didn't ask a lot in this category, but I still think it's helpful to know what students are looking for in that back to school season. And this is separate from textbooks. That's a whole different category and survey that we do. This is besides textbooks. What are students potentially going to come in your store looking for during back to school season? And as you can see here, the numbers don't add up to 100%. Because students need more than one thing. And so they can say, oh, I bought notebooks and I bought dorm decor. So that's why they don't add up down the column, so to speak. In terms of what students are buying for back to school, and this was in September and will be very similar for January as well. Your basic school supplies, your notebooks, your pens, that kind of thing. Again, I know the common misconception is that students type everything, but most students still want pencil, paper, pens, those basics in their backpacks, in their rooms for their use. That is the #1 purchase that they're making. They're definitely buying apparel and tech, which we've already talked about. But I do want to draw your attention to dorm decor and dorm supplies. In our spring panel on general merchandise, the one we did in spring 2023, and that we'll do again in a couple months, we asked students, what's something you really, really wish your college store had more of? And one of the top listed things was dorm decor or dorm-specific supplies. Students really want to see those types of items. So as an example, because I know that's a vague category, we had students who said, wow, I really wish our store carried storage containers that'll fit under the dorm beds because the beds were low and it was hard for them to find containers or boxes or other things that would actually fit under the beds. That was an example of something students were like, wow, I really wish, they had that. Sometimes there's regulations about what students can have in the dorms, and so students might be looking for decor that fits those regulations. So for example, if they're not allowed to light a candle, but they still want their room nicely scented, maybe a candle warmer or a plug-in air freshener, something they're allowed to have as an alternative. Those are things that students have frequently mentioned to us that they really wish their store carried or carried more of. So I definitely wanted to highlight number 4 and number 6 there as an area that students have brought to our attention in the past year or so. Now the good news is students are definitely going to the college store or the campus bookstore for these kinds of supplies. 1 and 2 are still what you might expect. Amazon and the big box stores really take a lot of business, right? But number 3 is the campus or college store. So definitely there is a good opportunity there to engage with students in their back to school shopping. And in-store shopping too. Just like some of the other areas I've mentioned, 60% of our students said they did most of their back to school shopping in person in a retail store. So this is something that really matters to them, is being able to go into a store, see it, feel it, touch it, and walk out with it. Yet another category where we see that trend. So definitely keep that in mind. Your in-store shoppers are really, really important here. So again, that's a very brief overview of back to school shopping. We'll have more on that in the next few months as we do our spring studies, but it's helpful to see not only that students are coming to the college or campus store, but some of the items they're looking for that you may not have in stock at the moment and could possibly have room for on your shelves. All right, so that's one of my 3 miscellaneous categories. Number 2 deals with stress and stress-related products. Now, I'll briefly put up what I call my downer slide, which is that unfortunately most of our students report being stressed, anxious, depressed, or all of the above. And unfortunately that's been consistent over the past few years. More than 3/4 of our students say they felt very stressed this term, 80% anxiety symptoms, and almost half said they've been feeling down or depressed at least several days out of the past couple of weeks consistently. So that's the not so good side of the story. I guess maybe the good news is that students have been seeking out products for stress relief. And we notice this especially for female identifying students. They're the ones who report feeling more stressed, anxious, or depressed. We also notice that students who are attending school part-time not only express more of these symptoms, but also more interest in stress relief products. We think that part-time, full-time difference may be due to life commitments. So for example, a part-time student may be working a job, may have childcare responsibilities that contribute to stress, depression, anxiety, and also their interest in products that help with that. So we definitely notice a gender difference here and a student type difference. here's what students are interested in to help them with their stress, their anxiety, and their depression. And these are actually an increase compared to last year. Students could select more than one, so again, they don't add up. Last year, maybe 5 to 10% fewer students wanted each of these items. So we're actually seeing increased interest in stress relief products. The only exception are sleep aids. Last year, more students wanted those compared to this year. But otherwise, the noise canceling headphones, the fidget toys, the little poppers like the bottom right there, more students this year want those items. So those are definitely things that students might be interested in seeing at the college or campus store, especially since exams and assignments and school-related stress are some of the top sources of stress for our students that they tell us about. So that's kind of our second miscellaneous category. What students are interested in related to their stress or anxiety, the products that they're looking for. And that gets me to my third and final one. And again, I'm just trying to highlight the ones that I think are most relevant to you today. My third one deals with kind of safety and personal protection. So I'll start with the good news. I had my downer slide, so maybe I'll have a more positive side here. Compared to 2022, our students said they felt safer on their campuses this year, which is great. Students are feeling a lot more comfortable on campus both day and night than they did a year ago. The not so good side though, at least in the United States, is we're still seeing a lot of news about mass shootings and some school-specific shootings. And that is definitely a difference between the US and Canada. Our students are still telling us that they're not really confident in their local or their campus police when it comes to school shootings and that possibility. They're also not super confident that their school is really ready for an emergency like that. That's definitely more US than Canada. Our Canadian students were a lot more, I wouldn't say a lot, were at least more comfortable with their local or campus police being prepared for that sort of event and their school being prepared for that sort of event. So even though our students are feeling safer overall, we are noticing school shootings still being a particular concern, and feeling safe in that kind of situation is still concerning for students, especially in the US, but in Canada too, just to a lesser degree. And that relates to student interest in what we call personal protective products. So this category doesn't include things like weapons, right? Because we have all kinds of rules on campuses about weapons. So it's more objects or devices you can use to defend yourself if attacked that don't quite rise to the level of a weapon. So I'll show a couple pictures here, and then I'll show the actual numbers. So on the left, these are what are called personal defense keychain fobs, basically. And each is designed basically to be sharp and pointy or unpleasant. So if someone's attacking you, you could punch back with one of these in your hand and defend yourself. So not really a weapon per se, but you could have it on your keychain to protect yourself. Some people put little cans of pepper spray or mace on a keychain, kind of like this one. The objects on your right, those are called tactical pins. They're not for your schoolwork, although they look like it. They're also designed to be pokey and sharp and unpleasant that you could use to defend yourself if someone is attacking you. Not quite a weapon, as I mentioned, but more of a personal protective kind of thing. Students have expressed pretty high interest in devices like these that are relatively inexpensive, but small and likely meet campus regulations. So in terms of actual numbers, I'll let you kind of digest these for a moment. Fairly sizable percentages of students say they want to purchase devices like these in the next 6 months. Some of your most popular ones are things like pepper spray or those personal defense keychains. I would ignore the stun gun line because there's so many local rules and laws on that it's probably not very reasonable for you. But things like the keychains or the pepper spray may be more feasible. Compared to last year, more students say they expect to find these items in the college or campus bookstore. And that is a shift. Last year, all of those percentages on the right were quite lower. This year, students are saying not only do they want these items, but they expect to find them in your store. The flashlight is kind of the odd one because that's not necessarily for personal defense. It could be for other things. But those other items are definitely more personal defense specific. And they're things that students really want to see in your store this year more than last year. So that is definitely a shift. Now, again, as I mentioned, this is a little more U.S. than Canada. Your Canadian percentages were a little bit lower in all these categories, but not a huge difference. Even the Canadian students want to see some of these items in the store. It's just we live in kind of a different violent crime context. I'll say that politely. I know our U.S. context is not very pretty right now for that. Now, my one caveat to that is students are not always aware of campus or local regulations for weapons or personal safety devices. So definitely tread carefully if you're considering carrying some of these items. Make sure that you and students know where it's okay or whether it's okay to have them. Some schools, for example, allow pepper spray if it's small and on a keychain. Other schools don't. So you definitely want to do some digging to know what's allowed on your campus as well as, whether students are actually interested. Okay. So my recap for those miscellaneous categories. The downside, students are feeling very stressed, they're feeling very anxious, they're feeling very depressed. So that does mean that they have interest in products that will help relieve those symptoms, whether it's a fidget toy, something that smells nice, headphones that drown out their annoying roommate. Those are things that they find attractive, likely related to how they're feeling, especially going into exam season. Students are feeling safer on campus this year, which is great, but they still have significant interest in those personal safety devices, especially the ones that are small and fit on a keychain in some way. Those are very marketable. And they're expecting to see those in your store, more so this year than last year. In terms of back to school shopping, again, I want to highlight the dorm decor and dorm specific furnishings as an area where students have told us, my store doesn't have enough in this category and we really want to see it. So besides the standard school supplies, if you're looking for something to carry in that category, the dorm decor, dorm furnishings, that's very marketable right now for students. So again, 3 kind of miscellaneous categories at the end, but our fall surveys really cover several areas. So kind of to recap from all of today, apparel is a biggie. Okay? We have tech, then we got into back to school, stress, and then personal safety. Those are the areas we cover in our fall student panel surveys that are really relevant right now and may help you stock your store for the spring, depending on what you're ordering at the moment. So I realize I threw a lot at you, and I would be happy to answer any and all questions that you have. So thank you very, very much for letting me talk at you for so long.
Thanks, Lacey. Does anybody have any questions that they'd like to ask? James, I see your hand up there. No? Just clapping.
We're just clapping. It's okay.
Thank you.
I saw it come up.
Sorry, it took me a minute to put my slides down, but now I can see all of you. So hello.
Anybody have questions? Stephanie, do you have a question? I see your hand.
Yeah, I do. For the dorm furniture and dorm supplies, could you just give a few more examples of some items that would be of interest, please?
Absolutely. So definitely the underbed storage was a popular one. Students were also interested in actual decor, whether it was like posters, pictures that would fit nicely on a wall. I don't know if Canada does this, but in the U.S., every Walmart everywhere has the very flat, thin mirrors that you can actually put in your dorm rooms that fit. Students were also interested in things that would help them hang their decor, because you're not allowed in most places to put holes in the walls. So I don't know what Canada carries, but down here it's Command Hooks, I think is the brand, that you put on the wall that won't cause damage. Those are some really specific examples that will help students hang anything and everything that they want without getting in trouble. And nowadays, I was in the store the other day, Command even sells key holders and all kinds of stuff. It's really expanded. It's what it carries now.
Thank you.
You're welcome. That was a great question.
Anybody else have any questions they'd like to ask before we let Lacey go? Katrina?
Yeah, sorry, I just have a quick question. In the past, I think there has been some information about logo placement on apparel and where students prefer to see logos, size of logos.
Yeah.
I didn't see that covered. I know it has been in sort of the trend issue, and I may even have an old one on my bulletin board that I can show you.
Yes.
This one. So I actually printed off and put it on my bulletin board as a I think, I can't even, this was 2021 CAMEX, and it was, I think B was full front 60%. So is there any data about logo placement?
Yes, I'm glad you asked. I had to be kind of choosy on what I put in the slides and what I didn't. So it's very similar. We haven't seen much change even since 2020. Students still want to see like front center big logo. Across the front or big center is where they want to see it. The down the sleeves logos, not really popular right now. It's still the big centered logos on the front or on the back, and more so on the front that they want to see, not along the side and not like the little pocket logo up here. So big and centered is really where they want it. We also asked them, you know, do you want to see your school name? Do you want to see your like graduation year or something like that? Students gravitated towards just general school name. They also said this year they really like shirts or clothing that references the town or the area where the school is located. So something city specific, for example, might be popular. They don't, this year they said they don't really care for specific teams from the school listed. So something that's, you know, basketball team or swim team specific, not super popular this year. So overall school or a reference to the town or area, yes. Team specific, not so much. Does that help a little bit, Katrina? Yeah, I'm glad you asked. I had to be so patient.
Thank you. I just, because apparel is such a huge percentage of our sales, I always like to kind of understand about logo placement, and that's very, and I think that's been quite a few years where they talk about the town, and I'm not sure if that's the U-Skate product specifically in the U.S. that keeps on coming up. I don't know. It's interesting.
It's tough. And I think it's also school dependent. So for some schools, maybe the town isn't as meaningful. I used to work for Penn State, which has a ton of separate campuses. And so what was popular for students was having a shirt that listed your specific campus, which is city-based. And so that made sense. So I think it also depends on your campus climate. If you have one main campus, maybe it's not as relevant for you. But if you have a school with like separate campuses, maybe having a campus specific shirt or logo is more helpful. And I think that's where that comes in a little bit more.
Stacy, go ahead.
Yes, hi there. Just sort of adding on to Katrina's question with the apparel, was there any sort of trend in the type of comfy stuff? Are they more still hoodies? Quarter zips have been really popular with us, but don't know about anywhere else, or just a good old crew neck, full zip jackets, anything like that?
A little bit. It's still your basic hoodie is still number one. I know. I wish I had more exciting news, but students still like the same hoodies that Stephen is showcasing for us here. The hoodies are still number one. with or without a zipper, there's still, that is what students go after. So yeah, the quarter zip is not just you. Students like hoodies in a variety of features when it comes to zippers, but hoodies are still what they're looking for. Absolutely.
Steve might have the hoodie, but the hat's out of date. Steve. Out of date.
I love this hat. You can pry it for my cold dead body.
James, you had a question. Go ahead.
There was a bit of a discussion in the chat about the personal defense items. Definitely pepper spray is illegal here. I don't know if a lot of the other stuff is. Was there any feedback on like mini alarms or whistles, something that would kind of replace that? Was that like a popular?
That was either second or third most popular. So I would say if pepper spray is not legal where you are, that's a good second or replacement option to offer for students. In the U.S., as you know, our laws and rules on everything are a little non-existent. So our students can get their hands on anything. But where you are, that might be more marketable. But yes, the alarm buttons that go on keychains, especially if they're small and go on a keychain, those are probably going to be, yes, there it is. Katrina's showing a picture of one. That will probably sell much better for you than it would in the U.S. Since pepper spray is legal where we are, pepper spray is our number one. So I would say that's definitely a U.S.-Canada difference there. And that's why I have the big disclaimer of laws are different everywhere. So knowing what's not just legal, but even allowable on your campus helps.
Great. Well, we're almost at time here. If you do have any more questions, you can always get a hold of Lacey. I think Lacey, it's L. Wallace.
Yeah.
At oncampusresearch.org. Is that right?
Yep. I'm actually going to put that in the chat right now.
Perfect. And before everybody logs off, I got a couple more just quick housekeeping things I wanted to mention to you. So again, Lacey, thank you so much for presenting today. I mean, it's great information that our members can take back to help them get prepared for the upcoming buying season and everything else. So it's great information. So thanks again for doing that. I also want to put in a plug again for the NAC Student Watch Survey for 2024. It's coming out in January. As Lacey mentioned, this is a large annual survey that NACS does, and it's open for any institution to participate in. And from what I understand, we only currently have 2 Canadian stores signed up to participate for the survey. Yeah. And I keep saying we do need more Canadian data and find out what's happening here in Canada. And NACS has the capacity and the ability to assist us with that. So we'd love it if more schools could participate in this survey. And all you have to do is get the survey link out to your students. Granted, I know that it's there's an approval process and things that you have to do on your end to be allowed to do that. So, but if you can get beyond that roadblock from any of you, I'd certainly encourage you to do that. And I will put up in the chat as well a link where you can get more information on that as well. If you want to learn a little bit more about, you can also reach out to Lacey as well on that.
And I with the approvals process. So if you're getting hung up in committees and approvals, that's my job, is to help you through that. So perfect. Yeah, if you get stuck on that, I know the magic words to tell your committees.
And then the other thing I want to just quickly mention is just want to remind members that we have an online session scheduled for December 14th. This is our sponsor showcase where we have Logan Canada, Penguin Random House, Vital Source, Will and Outdoors, all coming in to give a quick updates on the products and services. This session is one that all store members and personnel can attend, because a little bit on the course material side, a little bit on the general merchandise side. We really hope that you will take the time to join us for that session. These vendors have supported our industry and our association, and we need members to help us support them. Without our sponsors, of course, it makes it difficult for CSC to offer some of the things that we can do during the year. So December 14th, 12 noon Eastern Time, please try to be there. Also, I'm going to put a link to that. Oh, the other thing I want to mention is that we have our membership survey. The survey is not a store survey. It's a survey for all member contacts within the store. So we're trying to get your information and learn a little bit more about how CSC can help support you individually in your role at the store. So if you haven't done that survey, please do so. There's I think 25% of our member contacts have already participated, which is great, but we'd like to see more. So take a look at that as well. And my last plug is our show is coming up in Montreal at the end of January. This is the time when we see most of our members register for our show as you kind of get ready to take a break during the holiday season. So you should have received all the information about our annual conference. I encourage you to register. Also book your hotel room. The room block is filling up. The cutoff is January 5th. All of the information is on our website at campusstores.events. So if you want to register for the hotel, all the links are and everything are there. So that's it. That's my quick updates. I thank you for hanging on for a couple extra minutes for us to get for me to get through some of that. Again, Lacey, thank you so much for coming here today and presenting. Really appreciate it.
That was fun. This is what I do for fun. I'm such a nerd, but I love it. Thank you.
Thanks, everybody. Have a good week. Bye.